there is a quiet longing that lives in many people. An ache so subtle it rarely reaches language, yet it shapes the way they move through life. It appears in the instinct to pull back when change approaches, in the small hesitation that rises when new experiences threaten to reshape who they have always been. It is not stubbornness, nor fear, nor avoidance. It is the unspoken desire to remain untouched, to hold onto the fragments of identity that once felt safe, familiar, and predictable. The world asks people to evolve with its shifting seasons, yet beneath that pressure lies a tender wish to stay exactly as they are, unchanged by the world that keeps moving around them. There is always a beginning, though it rarely looks like one, and often it arrives wrapped in moments so ordinary they feel unremarkable. It might be a simple conversation that lingers longer in the mind than expected, an opportunity that should inspire excitement, but instead creates a gentle discomfort, or an invitation that makes someone pause rather than lean forward. At first, they do not name it resistance. They simply tell themselves they are tired, busy, or not ready. But behind those explanations lies a subtler truth, a quiet awareness that something inside them is holding tightly to what is familiar. This realization does not come with panic or urgency. It arrives slowly, softly, in the way someone protects their routines or feels an unexpected loyalty to older versions of themselves. It feels less like fear and more like discovering an old echo that has been whispering for years. People often assume resistance to change is a sign of anxiety, but the mind and heart share a more delicate truth. The first realization is not about terror or avoidance. It is the subtle recognition that a part of them wishes to remain untouched by time, circumstances, or transformation. There is something inside that whispers, almost pleading, "Let me stay as I am." This feeling can surface in the simplest moments. When someone sees an old photograph and feels a soft ache they cannot fully explain. When a familiar song stirs a longing that reaches deeper than nostalgia. Or when they sense that moving forward might require letting go of an identity that once kept them safe. These moments are fragile and easily dismissed, yet they hold tremendous psychological weight. A person may not speak about them, but they feel them in the pauses before making decisions, in the comfort they find in predictable patterns, in the subtle ways they avoid stepping beyond the edges of who they know themselves to be. Psychologists describe this as identity preservation, the mind's instinct to protect the familiar sense of self. But emotionally, it feels gentler than theory. It feels like guarding a small internal room, a place built from memories, roles, and versions of self that once held everything together. Recognizing this desire can bring both relief and confusion. Relief because it explains the instinct to hold on. Confusion because it is difficult to articulate why remaining the same feels safer than becoming someone new. The first true clarity often appears during transitions. A shift in work, the end of a relationship, a change in routine, or a new responsibility that subtly reshapes life structure. In these moments, a quiet tightening forms within, as if something is bracing for an unseen impact. They sense that change does not only alter external circumstances, it asks them to alter themselves. And that request feels heavier than most people admit. The realization deepens when someone understands that they are not resisting the world, but resisting the loss of the person they once needed to be. Old versions of the self rise again. Versions that survived difficult seasons, that protected them during uncertainty, that learned ways of thinking or behaving that made life manageable. These identities may no longer fit the present, yet they feel sacred, like worn pages of a story that shaped everything. Acknowledging this truth feels like standing at the threshold of an invisible doorway. One part of them recognizes that transformation is natural and unavoidable. Another part clings to the familiarity of who they have always been, and somewhere in the middle lies the quiet realization that they are not simply avoiding change. They are trying to preserve themselves. This is the beginning, the soft, almost hidden moment when a person becomes aware of the unspoken desire to stay unchanged. A desire rooted not in fear, but in the tenderness of remembering who they were before the world asked them to grow. Every desire has an origin, even the quiet wish to stay unchanged, and often its roots reach back further than a person realizes. Long before adulthood begins shaping identity through expectations and responsibilities, the earliest experiences carve out an emotional blueprint, a map of what feels safe, what feels threatening, and what must be protected at all costs. For many people, the desire to remain the same begins in childhood, in moments when stability was scarce or unpredictable, or in moments when consistency felt like the only anchor they had. The mind learned early that familiar ways of being could keep life manageable, even when the world around them shifted without warning. A child who grows up navigating emotional unpredictability becomes fluent in self-preservation. They cling to routines, to predictable reactions, to identities that guarantee acceptance or reduce conflict. These early adaptations do not disappear. They fossilize into adulthood, shaping how a person responds to change. And without realizing it, they begin to associate sameness with safety and transformation with risk. Even those who grew up in loving, stable homes may carry this desire. For them, identity becomes tied to the role they played: the responsible one, the calm one, the funny one, the one who didn't cause trouble. These roles became familiar shelters, soft places that made sense in a confusing world. Letting go of them now feels like abandoning a part of themselves that once mattered deeply. Through psychology, this phenomenon is understood as schema preservation, the mind's lifelong attempt to maintain the patterns it formed earliest. These schemas are not just beliefs, they are emotional frameworks, silent agreements the mind makes with itself. Stay this way. It worked before. It keeps you safe. And so, even when new experiences arrive that could expand or enrich someone's life, a deeper instinct quietly resists. Not because the change is unwelcome, but because the past taught the person that newness often comes with hidden cost. In families where emotional expression was discouraged, staying unchanged becomes a form of protection. A child who learns not to reveal too much grows into an adult who guards their inner world, fearing that openness will disrupt the equilibrium they worked so hard to maintain. In families where expectations were rigid, identity becomes a performance, a practiced version of self repeated for approval. Changing that identity feels like betraying the script that once earned love. Even cultural and environmental factors play a role. Societies that emphasize tradition, duty, or collective identity often teach individuals that altering themselves disrupts the delicate balance of belonging. So the desire to stay unchanged becomes a way of honoring the past, of staying loyal to one's community, lineage, or upbringing. But the roots of this desire are not always tied to pain. Sometimes they are tied to tenderness. People hold onto old versions of themselves because those versions carry precious memories. Childhood innocence, first friendships, early dreams, a time when life felt simpler. Change threatens to rewrite those memories, and so a person resists not out of fear, but out of longing. They want to preserve the emotional purity of who they used to be. This longing can be seen in the reluctance to let go of old habits, in the attachment to familiar environments, or in the quiet sadness that surfaces during major life transitions. It is a reminder that identity is not merely a psychological structure, but a living archive of experiences, emotions, and stories that shaped someone's earliest sense of self. And so the roots of the desire to stay unchanged grow deep. Woven through childhood coping mechanisms, attachment patterns, learned roles, and tender memories, it becomes clear that this longing is not a flaw or a shortcoming. It is a natural response born from the earliest lessons about what makes a person feel safe. Before change can be understood, these origins must be acknowledged, because the story of resisting transformation begins not in adulthood, but in the intimate landscapes of the past, where the foundation of identity first took shape. The human mind is wired to seek continuity, and at the center of that continuity lies identity. The internal story a person tells themselves about who they are, why they behave as they do, and what meaning their life holds. This story does not remain static, yet the brain prefers when it feels stable, coherent, and familiar. Psychologists refer to this as the principle of ego continuity, the deep cognitive desire to maintain a consistent sense of self across time. When change threatens to alter this inner narrative, even in ways that might be healthy or necessary, the mind quietly resists, not out of stubbornness, but out of a need to protect the psychological framework that gives life structure. Within this framework lie countless internal schemas, mental templates formed through experience, shaping what a person expects from themselves and the world. These schemas become the silent architecture of identity. They determine how someone interprets new situations, how much risk feels acceptable, and how much transformation they believe they can survive. When change challenges these internal templates, it can feel like cracking the foundation of the self. Even positive transformation, a new opportunity, a new relationship, a new sense of purpose, can trigger this internal alarm. The brain is designed to favor familiarity because familiarity signals safety. Predictable patterns allow the nervous system to conserve energy, avoid threat, and maintain equilibrium. This is why people often repeat behaviors long after they have outlived their usefulness. The known, even when unhelpful, feels safer than the unknown. cognitive rigidity can emerge from this process. The mind's tendency to cling to established interpretations of who a person is supposed to be. It appears in self-descriptions that feel more like prisons than truths. This is just how I am. I've always been this way. I can't change now. These statements are not resistance. They are self-preservation. They are the psyche's attempt to hold the world still long enough to feel stable inside it. Neuroscience adds another dimension to this struggle. The brain encodes identity through networks of memories, emotions, and habits that become deeply interconnected. When one part shifts, others must reorganize, and the brain treats this reorganization as effortful, even threatening. Transformation requires neuroplasticity, the rewiring of patterns that took years to form. But the mind, shaped by evolution to avoid unnecessary risk, often opts for stability instead. Emotionally, this feels like an internal tension, a soft but persistent pull toward who someone has always been, even when a new version of themselves quietly calls for expression. This tension is not weakness, it is the psychological cost of growth. For people who have endured past instability, this cost feels even heavier. When someone has survived unpredictable environments, emotionally turbulent households, inconsistent relationships, sudden shifts in circumstance, the brain becomes finely tuned to any sign of disruption. Change becomes associated with threat, chaos, or loss of control. And so identity preservation becomes an instinct, a reflex, a shield. It keeps the self intact. It maintains the familiar emotional landscape even when that landscape is outdated. But identity preservation is not purely defensive. It is also deeply emotional. People cling to certain identities because they carry stories that matter. Stories that represent survival, strength, belonging, or hope. Letting go of those identities feels like letting go of the person they had to become to make it this far. And so the psychology of resisting change becomes clearer. It is the mind's attempt to honor its history, protect its structure, and preserve the self it spent years constructing. The desire to stay unchanged is not a refusal to grow. It is an effort to remain whole within a world that constantly asks people to reshape themselves. Only by understanding this psychological foundation can someone begin to see why change feels so heavy, and why staying the same feels, in its own quiet way, like a necessary form of survival. There comes a point when the desire to stay unchanged is no longer just a quiet longing buried beneath everyday life. It becomes an inner conflict, a private tug of war between what someone has always been and what the world is asking them to become. This conflict does not erupt dramatically. It unfolds in subtle internal shifts. A person feels it when new responsibilities demand different strengths, when relationships begin to evolve, when life pushes them toward roles they never imagined taking on. Inside them, two forces begin to move in opposite directions. One reaching toward growth out of necessity or curiosity, and the other clinging tightly to the stability of their familiar identity. This fight is not loud. It is not violent. It rarely shows on the surface. Instead, it appears in the quiet exhaustion someone feels after social interactions that require them to stretch beyond their old emotional boundaries. It shows up in the hesitation before accepting opportunities that would reshape how they are seen by others. It hides in the